normal human life 40,000 years ago begins inside a small group that is always moving. These people survive by staying together, sharing food, and watching the land around them. A child is born into this group without ceremony or celebration. Birth is common, and survival is uncertain, so life continues almost immediately after it happens. The group does not stop for long in one place. Animals move, seasons change, and food disappears quickly, so staying still for too long can be dangerous. From the beginning, the child belongs to everyone. There is no idea of a private family life like today, because survival depends on shared responsibility. Adults carry the child during long walks across open land. Travel is normal, not special, and the child grows up learning that movement is part of life. People in this time do not think about age and numbers. No one knows how many years they are old, only whether they are strong enough to keep up. Life is shaped by the environment. Cold, heat, rain, and wind affect daily decisions, and the group must react quickly when conditions change. Food is never guaranteed. Some days there is plenty, and some days there is very little, so everyone learns early not to expect comfort. Many children do not survive their first years. This is understood by everyone, even if it is never spoken about directly. Because of this, the group stays alert. Children are kept close, not out of fear, but because attention keeps them alive. There are no written records or stories written down. Everything people know is carried in memory and passed on through spoken words. Beliefs are simple but strong. People believe the land, animals, and unseen forces can influence their lives, and stories help explain what cannot be controlled. From birth, the child is surrounded by work, movement, and decision-making. There is no separate world for children and adults. As time passes, the child becomes familiar with the group's rhythm. Walking, stopping, watching, and waiting all become normal parts of life. The group chooses where to go based on signs in nature. Tracks, weather, and seasons guide every decision they make. This is how a normal human life begins 40,000 years ago. Not with choice or plans, but by adapting to a world that never slows down. As the child grows, they begin to move on their own more often, following the group during daily travel and slowly learning how far they can go. Childhood is short. By the age modern people would call 5 or 6, children already understand that everyone must contribute to survive. Children learn by watching, not by being taught. They observe how adults move, react to danger, and decide where to go next. There are no lessons or explanations. If a child makes a mistake, they learn from the result, not from punishment or long talks. Daily life becomes the classroom. Walking long distances, carrying items, and staying alert are part of growing up. Children quickly learn which places are safe and which are dangerous by seeing how adults behave in different situations. Play exists, but it often looks like practice. Throwing objects, running, and climbing help build skills needed later in life. Food gathering is an important part of childhood. Children help collect plants, watch animals, and learn what should not be eaten. Older children are trusted with small tasks. These tasks seem simple, but they matter to the group's survival. Mistakes are expected. A dropped tool or wrong decision is part of learning, not a reason for shame. Stories play a big role in teaching. Elders tell stories about past hunts, bad seasons, and people who made serious mistakes. These stories are remembered because they help children understand danger without having to face it themselves. By watching and listening, children learn how to behave without written rules or spoken laws. Childhood ends quietly. There's no clear moment when a child becomes something else, only growing responsibility. By this stage, the child already knows how to move with the group, help when needed, and stay alive. This is how childhood works in a world where survival matters more than comfort or freedom. As childhood continues, the group slowly expects more from the child, not through rules or speeches, but through daily work that everyone must share. By this age, the child clearly understands that food never appears by chance, and that every meal is the result of effort, planning, and cooperation. Children begin helping in ways that truly matter, carrying supplies, watching tools, and staying alert while others focus on hunting or gathering. They learn to read the land by watching adults, noticing tracks, broken plants, disturbed soil, and small signs that show where animals have passed. Hunting is learned slowly and carefully, starting with patience and silence, because moving too fast or making noise can ruin an entire hunt. Gathering food becomes equally important since plants provide most daily calories, and choosing the wrong ones can cause serious illness or death. Children learn gathering by staying close to experienced members, listening to warnings, and remembering which plants are safe in each season. Tools are no longer distant objects. Children clean them, carry them, and sometimes help repair simple tools that break during daily use. They see how quickly a useful tool can fail if handled carelessly, and how replacing it requires time, skill, and good materials. Fire is treated with respect rather than fear. Children learn where it is safe to stand and how one mistake can damage food or shelter. Movement becomes more controlled and purposeful. Running, stopping suddenly, hiding, and changing direction are practiced during travel and hunts. Children also learn to read people, noticing when adults become quiet, tense, or focused, because these changes often signal danger nearby. Stories play an important role in learning. Elders tell stories about failed hunts, bad decisions, and moments when ignoring signs caused loss. These stories are remembered because they are useful, not because they are entertaining, and forgetting them can lead to serious consequences. As skills improve, children are trusted with greater responsibility, such as watching food stores or helping guide younger children. Responsibility grows gradually, but no one is allowed to remain useless, because survival depends on everyone contributing something. Children learn that cooperation matters more than strength, since one careless action can put the entire group at risk. Sharing becomes normal and expected. Food, tools, and space belong to the group because survival depends on fairness and trust. Long-distance travel builds endurance, and children learn that resting too often can mean falling behind and becoming vulnerable. Fear is controlled rather than ignored. Panic creates danger, so children learn to stay calm even when situations feel threatening. By this stage, children are no longer protected from reality and see injury, loss, and failure as part of normal life. This exposure shapes how they think, teaching them that survival is never guaranteed and that effort is always required. Skills learned during this time begin to define future roles, whether someone becomes a hunter, gatherer, scout, or toolmaker. No one chooses these roles directly. Ability, experience, and the environment slowly decide what each person becomes. By the end of this stage, the child is no longer just learning, but actively contributing to the group's survival. Their actions now affect others, and this changes how they see themselves and their place within the group. This is when childhood truly begins to fade, replaced by responsibility, awareness, and growing importance. By now, the child is no longer just following others. People begin to notice what he does, how he moves, and whether he can be trusted during long days. No one announces that he has grown up. One day, he is simply asked to help, and that request quietly changes how he sees himself. He is sent ahead with others to watch the land, not far, but far enough that mistakes would matter if he made them. When food is carried, he's given a share to hold. It is not heavy, but it is important, and dropping it would affect everyone. During hunts, he is placed where silence matters. He learns that standing still can be harder than running, and far more important. Sometimes he fails. A sound is made, an animal escapes, and no one shouts. The disappointment is enough to teach the lesson. Around the fire, he listens more carefully now. Stories feel different when he knows he might be the one inside them one day. Older members begin to speak to him directly, not as a child, but as someone expected to understand and remember. He is trusted to watch tools while others sleep. Nothing dramatic happens, but staying awake teaches him responsibility. When the group moves, he helps choose paths, pointing out signs he recognizes. Sometimes he's right, sometimes not, but he is included. Food is shared as before, but now he notices who eats last and why. Survival feels more real when he understands the balance. Danger feels closer now, not louder or scarier, just closer, because he knows his actions can bring it nearer or keep it away. He begins to feel pride, not from praise, but from knowing he did not slow the group down that day. There is less protection now. If he wanders too far, no one rushes to stop him. He's expected to know better. Mistakes still happen, but excuses disappear. What matters is learning fast enough not to repeat them. At night, he feels the weight of the day in his body, not exhaustion, but the quiet knowledge that he mattered. This is when the group starts to rely on him in small ways, and those small ways slowly become larger. He is no longer invisible. His presence changes outcomes, and that realization stays with him. Childhood does not end suddenly. It fades as usefulness takes its place. From this point on, life will expect more, and he will be expected to give it. There is no clear moment when he becomes an adult. One season he is still treated carefully, and the next he is expected to act without hesitation. His body changes, but more important is how others look at him now. Eyes linger longer, and silence waits for his reaction before anyone else moves. He is sent farther from the group, sometimes for hours, expected to return with information rather than excuses or empty hands. Mistakes cost more now. A wrong choice means wasted time, lost food, or extra danger, and everyone feels the result, not just him. Older members stop correcting him immediately. They let him decide, because learning to choose is part of becoming useful. He begins to join full hunts, not at the edges, but where timing and coordination matter most and fear must be controlled. Strength helps, but control matters more. He learns that rushing ruins plans, and patience often decides success or failure. The group no longer shields him from hard moments. Injury, loss, and tension are seen directly, without explanation or comfort. At night, stories sound different. He listens not as a child, but as someone who may soon repeat the same mistakes or successes. Relationships shift quietly. He spends more time with certain people, learning trust, rivalry, and cooperation without anyone naming it. There are expectations now. If he does not show up ready, others notice. If he performs well, fewer words are spoken, but respect grows. Danger feels personal. It is no longer something adults handle while he watches. His actions can protect others or put them at risk. He learns when to speak and when to stay silent, understanding that words can change decisions as much as actions. Food tastes different when he helps secure it. Hunger feels sharper when failure was partly his responsibility. There is pressure, but not cruelty. The group needs capable people, and he is becoming one of them. He is no longer guided step by step. The path is open, and he must walk it without being carried. This stage ends not with ceremony, but with acceptance. One day, he is simply treated as someone who belongs among the adults. From here on, life will not slow down for him, because it no longer can. As an adult, his days begin without questions. He wakes knowing what must be done, because the group depends on routine more than discussion. Morning is not calm or rushed. People check the land, the weather, and each other before deciding where effort should be spent that day. Some days are spent moving, following animals, or searching for better ground. Other days are slower, focused on repair, preparation, and watching. He no longer waits for instructions. He knows when to act, when to stay quiet, and when to move, because hesitation now costs energy and safety. Food shapes every decision. If supplies are low, risk increases. If food is found, the group protects it carefully until it can be shared. During hunts, he understands his position without being told. Each person has a place, and breaking that order can ruin everything. Silence matters more than speed. He has learned that rushing creates noise, and noise turns success into empty hands. When hunting fails, no one complains. Failure is expected. What matters is returning alive and learning what went wrong. Gathering days are different. These days feel longer, but they feed more people and require constant attention to avoid mistakes. He knows which plants are safe, which are seasonal, and which can harm. This knowledge comes from memory, not written rules. Travel is constant. The group rarely stays long, because staying too long means food disappears and danger grows familiar. Walking for hours is normal. Pain is ignored unless it stops movement completely. Endurance is part of being useful. When the group rests, he repairs tools, sharpens stone, and checks supplies. Small tasks now prevent large problems later. Fire is maintained carefully. Losing fire means losing warmth, protection, and cooked food, which can change survival quickly. Decisions are shared but not equal. Experience matters. Older voices are listened to first, but younger ones are not ignored. Arguments happen quietly. Loud conflict attracts danger. Disagreements are settled through action, not long debate. By midday, fatigue appears, but stopping early is rare. Work continues until the group decides the risk is no longer worth it. Food is shared without counting portions. Everyone watches who eats and who waits, understanding balance without words. At night, the group gathers closer, not for comfort, but because darkness hides movement beyond sight. Stories are told, but they are short and practical. These stories remind people what happened before and why certain choices matter. He listens, even to stories he already knows. Repetition keeps memory sharp and mistakes fewer. Sleep comes in stages. Some rest, others watch. He takes his turn without complaint, knowing safety depends on awareness. In quiet moments, he feels the weight of responsibility, not fear, but understanding that his actions affect others. This is not heroism, it is normal life. Most days look like this, without drama or reward. The next day will be similar, and that is the point. Survival depends on predictable effort, not rare moments of bravery. Years pass through these repeated days. Strength remains, but nothing is wasted on pride or comfort. This is what adulthood looks like here. Not freedom, not choice, but steady contribution to something larger. Life continues this way until the body begins to slow and the group slowly adjusts around that change. As years pass, work and travel blend into one long pattern that defines his life more than any single event ever could. The group moves often, sometimes following animals, sometimes leaving an area because food has grown scarce or danger feels too close. He no longer asks why they move. Experience has taught him that staying too long is how hunger and illness begin. Long journeys are common now, lasting days or even weeks, with no clear destination beyond finding better ground. Walking becomes automatic. His body knows the pace, when to slow, and when to push forward without anyone saying a word. Travel is not quiet or peaceful. People watch the land constantly, knowing that danger often appears without warning. At night, camps are chosen carefully. Too open means exposure, too closed means traps, and balance matters more than comfort. Food gained during travel is guarded closely. A single careless moment can waste days of effort and risk everyone's strength. Some journeys end with success. Animals are found, food is secured, and the group eats well for a short time. Other journeys fail. Tracks disappear, weather changes, or animals move on, leaving the group tired and hungry. Failure is not dramatic. No one blames anyone openly, because blame does not create food or safety. Instead, people adjust, routes change, effort shifts, and the group keeps moving because stopping is worse. He begins to understand how thin survival really is. A few bad decisions can undo years of experience. Injuries happen more often during travel. Twisted ankles, deep cuts, and exhaustion slow the group in dangerous ways. When someone cannot keep up, the group must decide quickly how to adjust without putting everyone at risk. Sometimes they slow down. Sometimes they change direction. Sometimes difficult choices are made without discussion. He has seen people left behind, not out of cruelty, but because the group could not survive otherwise. These moments stay with him longer than successful hunts, shaping how seriously he treats every decision. Work during travel never truly ends. Tools must be checked, food protected, and fire kept alive whenever possible. Fire is carried carefully, because losing it during travel can change survival overnight. Weather controls everything. Sudden cold, heavy rain, or strong wind can turn progress into danger. He learns to read clouds, air, and animal behavior better than words, trusting signs that cannot be explained easily. Travel teaches patience. Some days bring nothing, and effort feels wasted, but giving up guarantees failure. The group relies on routine to stay sane. Small, repeated actions give structure to days that otherwise blur together. Work gives purpose. Without it, fear and doubt grow quickly, especially during long stretches of hunger. He notices that younger members struggle more during travel. He helps them quietly, remembering his own early failures. Leadership shifts naturally. Those who see danger early or find food gain quiet influence without titles or orders. No one talks about the future in distant terms. The future is tomorrow, and sometimes only the next few hours. Survival feels fragile but familiar. Danger does not feel shocking anymore, only present. Work, travel, and survival are no longer separate ideas. They are the same thing, repeated every day in different forms. This way of life shapes him deeply, leaving little space for doubt or dreams beyond the next safe place. Yet within this routine, he feels useful, needed, and connected to the group that moves beside him. Life continues through these journeys until age begins to change how much he can carry and how far he can walk. As adulthood continues, relationships stop being optional and become part of survival, shaping daily choices and long-term stability within the group. Partnerships form quietly, without ceremony or promises, usually between people who have learned to trust each other during travel and shared work. Choosing a partner is not about romance. It is about reliability, patience, and knowing how someone reacts when food is scarce or danger appears. Living close to others leaves little space for privacy, so relationships grow through routine rather than words or dramatic moments. Arguments happen, but they are short. Holding grudges wastes energy, and energy is needed for walking, hunting, and staying alert. Children begin to appear naturally, not planned, and their arrival changes how the group moves and how risks are taken. Parents do not raise children alone. Responsibility spreads across the group because survival fails when care depends on one person. Older children help watch younger ones, learning responsibility early and freeing adults to focus on food and protection. Family is not a small unit here. It is the entire group, connected by shared effort, shared risk, and shared memory. Loss is common. Some children do not survive, and some adults disappear during travel or hunting without warning. Grief exists, but life does not stop for it. The group mourns quietly and continues moving because stopping invites more loss. Stories about lost people are told later, often as lessons, reminding others what went wrong or what could not be controlled. Partnerships sometimes change. If someone dies, the group adjusts, and new bonds form slowly without formal decisions. Children grow up knowing many adults, not just parents, and learn behavior by watching how adults treat each other. Respect grows with age and experience. Older members speak less, but when they do, people listen carefully. Conflict with other groups is avoided when possible. Fighting risks injury, and injury threatens survival more than pride. Trade happens occasionally, sharing tools, food, or information, but trust is limited and built slowly over time. Stories about other groups turn into legends, warning of danger or reminding people to stay cautious around strangers. As years pass, relationships deepen through shared history. People remember who helped during hard times and who caused problems. Trust becomes the strongest currency. A trusted person can calm panic, guide decisions, and hold the group together. Children raised in this environment grow into adults already shaped by these relationships and expectations. Family life is not gentle or easy, but it is stable in its own way, built on routine and shared dependence. Love is shown through action, not words, by carrying weight, sharing food, and staying alert when others sleep. As age increases, his role within relationships changes. He begins advising more and acting less without noticing the shift. Younger adults start taking positions he once held, and he steps back without resentment, understanding the pattern. Family in this world is not about comfort, it is about continuity, ensuring the group survives beyond one lifetime. Through these bonds, life gains meaning beyond daily survival, even if no one ever names it that way. This network of relationships carries the group forward, even as individual lives slowly change and fade. As time passes, he understands that knowledge is the most valuable thing the group has, even more important than tools or food. Nothing is written down. There are no symbols, marks, or records, so everything that matters must live inside people's memories. Because of this, listening becomes a skill. Those who remember well are respected, because forgetting can lead to hunger or death. Knowledge is shared slowly, often at night when work is done and the group sits close enough to hear every word. Stories are not told for entertainment alone. Each one carries a lesson about danger, survival, or choices that once changed everything. Some stories explain where animals move during certain seasons and why certain lands should be avoided. Other stories warn about sickness, strange weather, or moments when people ignored signs and paid a high price. He has heard many of these stories before, but now he listens differently, knowing he may need them one day. Older members repeat the same stories again and again, because repetition keeps memory strong and mistakes fewer. There is no shame in repeating knowledge. Forgetting is dangerous, and no one assumes they will remember everything. Children are expected to listen quietly. Interrupting stories is discouraged because missing details can change meaning. Knowledge is also passed through action. Watching how someone prepares tools or chooses a path teaches more than words. Mistakes become part of learning. When something goes wrong, people talk about it later so others do not repeat it. Some stories slowly turn into legends. Details change over time, but the lesson remains clear and useful. He notices that elders speak less often, but when they do, everyone pays attention without question. Their experience is trusted, not because they are always right, but because they have survived longer than most. Knowledge decides leadership here. Those who understand land, animals, and people guide decisions naturally. There are no teachers, but everyone is both a student and a guide at different times. As he grows older, others begin asking him questions, testing what he remembers and how clearly he explains it. Answering these questions makes him careful. Passing wrong information can be as dangerous as ignorance. Some knowledge is kept quiet. Certain places, mistakes, or events are not spoken about often, out of respect or fear. Silence itself becomes a form of knowledge, teaching when not to speak or ask questions. Over time, he realizes that memory connects generations. The dead continue guiding the living through remembered stories. Without writing, forgetting is permanent. What is not repeated slowly disappears from the group forever. This makes every story important, even small ones, because they shape future decisions. He begins repeating stories himself, choosing words carefully so meaning is not lost or twisted. Through this process, he becomes part of something larger than his own life. Knowledge here does not belong to individuals. It belongs to the group and survives only if shared. This shared memory allows the group to adapt, survive, and continue moving through an uncertain world. As his body slowly begins to change with age, this knowledge becomes his greatest contribution. As years pass, he notices changes not in one moment, but across many days when his body responds a little slower than it used to. He still wakes ready to move, but mornings take longer, and stiffness reminds him that strength does not stay forever, even for the capable. The group does not speak openly about age, but everyone notices who walks at the front and who now stays closer to the center. He is no longer expected to carry the heaviest loads, yet his presence still matters because experience often prevents mistakes. During travel, younger members move ahead while he watches the land more carefully, noticing signs they might ignore. He speaks more now, not often, but at the right moments, when a short warning can save hours of effort or prevent danger. Decisions slowly shift around him. He is consulted before movement, but not always followed, and he accepts this without resentment. Aging here does not mean rest. As long as someone can contribute, they are expected to do so in whatever way they can. When hunting, he stays back, helping plan routes or watching the surroundings instead of running with the group. Gathering and tool repair become more important roles because small failures can now cost more than lost speed. Younger adults listen closely when he explains why certain paths failed in the past or why some choices look safe but are not. His value changes from physical strength to judgment, memory, and calm response during tense moments. Injuries take longer to heal now. A twisted ankle or strained muscle affects him for weeks instead of days. Because of this, the group adjusts its pace, not out of kindness, but because losing experience is more dangerous than slowing slightly. He becomes more aware of risk, choosing caution over speed, knowing recovery is no longer guaranteed. At night, he speaks more during stories, correcting details or reminding others how events truly unfolded. These corrections matter because memory keeps the group alive just as much as food or tools. Children begin watching him differently, noticing how he moves less but understands more. He answers questions patiently, knowing that passing knowledge forward is now part of his responsibility. There are moments when he feels frustration, especially when younger members ignore advice and learn the hard way. Still, he remembers doing the same and understands that experience must be earned, not given. The group no longer sees him as someone who must prove usefulness every day. Instead, his presence provides stability, a sense that someone has seen this before and survived it. Travel becomes more difficult, but stopping entirely is not an option unless the group chooses it. He learns to manage energy carefully, contributing when needed and stepping back when his body demands it. Aging here is not dramatic. It is quiet, gradual, and woven into daily life rather than marked by events. There is no retirement or final role, only adjustment and acceptance of changing limits. The group continues to move, and he moves with it, just at a different pace than before. He knows now that survival is no longer about speed or strength, but about helping others avoid mistakes he once made. This stage of life carries a strange calm, shaped by fewer ambitions and clearer understanding of what truly matters. He does not fear aging itself, but the possibility of becoming a burden, something he works to avoid. As long as he can offer guidance, memory, and steady judgment, he still belongs. And for now, that is enough to keep moving with the group. As he grows old, his life begins to reflect how people of that time understood aging, death, and the unseen forces they believed shaped the world around them. Many groups believed long life meant protection from unseen spirits, because surviving many seasons suggested someone was watched over by powerful forces. Older people were often linked to stories about animals, ancestors, or lands that no longer existed, because memory was seen as a kind of power. There were no written myths, but spoken legends explained why certain animals were respected and why some places were never visited again. Some stories said the world had once been easier, with more animals and fewer dangers, until people angered forces they could not see. Elders remembered times when herds were larger and rivers behaved differently, and these memories slowly turned into stories of a lost age. People believed dreams mattered. Dreams were often discussed in the morning, especially if they involved animals, fire, or death. A dream about a hunt could change plans for the entire group, because ignoring signs was believed to invite disaster. As the body weakened, older people focused less on movement and more on explaining what signs meant and how to read them correctly. Knowledge about weather came from experience, not science. Certain winds, clouds, or animal behavior were believed to warn of danger. Legends spoke of people who ignored these signs and vanished, teaching lessons without needing proof or explanation. Death was not hidden. People saw it often, so it was treated as a transition rather than an ending. Some believed the dead remained close, watching the living through animals, fire, or the land itself. Because of this, people spoke carefully near certain places, especially where others had died or disappeared. Older members were often the ones who remembered burial places, old camps, and paths that should never be used again. As his strength fades, he spends more time near the center of the group, telling stories that explain not just what happened, but why it mattered. Children listen closely, because these stories mix real events with belief, creating rules for living without written laws. There were no clear borders between fact and legend. If a story helped people survive, it was considered true enough. Fire remained sacred. Many believed fire carried messages upward, which is why silence often followed the lighting of a new flame. As his voice weakens, others repeat his stories, changing small details but keeping the core lessons alive. This repetition is how history survives in a world without writing, carried by memory rather than records. He knows his role is nearly finished, not because anyone says it, but because fewer questions are directed his way. Still, his presence matters. Groups feared losing elders suddenly, because knowledge could vanish with them. The last years of life were often quieter, focused on watching, remembering, and correcting rather than acting. People did not fear death as an enemy, but as something expected, like winter or hunger. Legend said those who lived well would return as part of the land, guiding others through signs and instincts. As he listens to younger voices take over, he accepts that life moves forward without stopping for anyone. What remains after him is not a body, but stories, habits, and warnings woven into the group's memory. This is how people prepared for death without rituals, books, or promises of an afterlife. Life did not end with certainty, but with continuity, carried forward by those who remained. As the final years pass, death is no longer a distant idea, but a familiar presence that everyone understands will come without warning or ceremony. People of this time do not fear death the way modern people do, because it has always been close, visible, and impossible to avoid. Illness, injury, or weakness can end a life quickly, and no one expects certainty or fairness from the world around them. When someone dies, the group does not panic or stop moving for long because survival of the living always comes first. The body is treated with respect, but without elaborate rituals, since long ceremonies can attract danger or waste energy. Some groups bury the dead in shallow graves, while others leave bodies in places believed to be connected to spirits or animals. There are stories of people returning to the land as animals, wind, or signs, guiding the living through instinct rather than words. Fire often plays a role after death, believed to help release something unseen back into the world. Silence follows death, not out of fear, but because people believe words should not disturb what cannot be understood. Children see death early in life, so it does not shock them later. It becomes part of how the world works. Legends tell of ancestors watching from beyond, protecting the group if respected and ignored if forgotten. Because of this belief, names of the dead are sometimes spoken carefully or avoided entirely, depending on the story. What truly matters after death is not the body, but what the person leaves behind in memory and habit. Skills, warnings, and lessons continue through repetition, keeping the dead present in daily decisions. A mistake avoided because of an old story is seen as proof that memory has power. Groups believe forgetting the dead invites bad fortune, because forgotten knowledge leads to repeated mistakes. As one life ends, others continue without pause because stopping would mean hunger, exposure, or danger. Children grow into adults already shaped by stories of those who lived before them. In this way, no life is completely lost. It becomes part of a larger pattern that repeats across generations. Time continues without counting years, carrying new people into the same struggles and decisions. The group moves on, but traces remain in paths, camps, and stories told during long nights. People believe the land remembers, even if humans do not, holding signs of those who walked before. Death marks an ending for one person, but not for the group, which survives by remembering and adapting. This belief allows people to accept loss without despair, knowing life will continue as it always has. The final moments of life are not dramatic. They arrive quietly, often during rest, illness, or simple exhaustion. Those nearby understand what is happening without needing words or explanations. There are no final speeches, promises, or regrets spoken aloud, because life here is lived in the present. What matters has already been done through action, not words. After death, the group adjusts its movement, its balance, and its memory. Someone else takes over the role that was left behind, learning through repetition and time. The world does not change because one person is gone, but the group does, slightly, quietly. This slow change is how humanity survives, not through heroes, but through continuity. A normal human life 40,000 years ago ends without records, names, or monuments. Yet it continues through habits, stories, and choices made by those who remain. This is how life closes and begins again in a world that never stops moving. For most people of this time, life is shaped by constant movement because the world itself is changing and never stays the same for long. Large areas are covered by ice or cold grasslands, forcing groups to follow animals across vast distances to survive. People do not migrate for adventure. They move because staying means hunger, cold, or running out of animals to hunt. These journeys can last generations, not weeks, with children born far from where their grandparents once lived. Groups follow familiar routes passed down through stories, remembering where water stays unfrozen and animals return each year. Some paths are avoided completely, remembered only through warnings about cold, danger, or people who never returned. The Ice Age world is harsh but predictable. Cold seasons are expected, and survival depends on preparing rather than hoping. People learn to read the land carefully, noticing how ice retreats, rivers shift, and animals change direction over time. Migration creates connections between distant groups, even if they never meet directly. Stories describe other people living beyond the horizon, sometimes friendly, sometimes dangerous, always unknown. Some legends say humans once followed animals endlessly until the land itself began to change beneath their feet. These stories help explain why familiar hunting grounds disappear and why old paths no longer work. Moving across new land brings fear, but also opportunity, as untouched areas offer food and safety for a time. Children grow up knowing no single place is home, only the group and the direction they are moving. Belonging comes from people, not land, because land is temporary, but the group continues. Migration teaches flexibility, plans change quickly, and survival depends on adapting rather than resisting. Groups that refuse to move often disappear, becoming stories told as warnings rather than memories. The Ice Age world rewards awareness and patience, punishing those who expect stability. Through movement, humans spread across continents, slowly filling lands that were once empty. No one knows they are shaping history. They are simply following food, warmth, and safety. This endless movement becomes normal, shaping how people think about life in the future. Life is not about building, but about following patterns that repeat across generations. Animals dominate this world more than humans do, shaping daily decisions and long-term survival. People live alongside massive creatures like mammoths, giant deer, and woolly rhinoceros, which appear often in stories. Hunting such animals is dangerous and rare, but success can feed a group for weeks or months. Because of this, many legends describe giant animals as spirits or ancestors rather than simple prey. Some stories say humans once spoke to animals, asking permission before hunts, though no one remembers how. Over time, people notice changes, herds become smaller, animals migrate differently, and familiar species vanish. These changes are not understood scientifically, but explained through belief, punishment, or imbalance in the world. Some legends claim humans took too much, angering forces that protected the great animals. Others say the cold itself killed the giants, leaving humans to survive with smaller prey. As large animals disappear, people adapt by hunting smaller game and relying more on gathering. This shift changes daily life, requiring more effort for less reward and increasing competition between groups. Stories about the giants grow more dramatic over time, turning real animals into symbols of a lost age. Children hear these stories and imagine a world richer and easier than their own. The disappearance of megafauna becomes one of the first great changes humans remember collectively. Without knowing it, people are witnessing the end of one era and the beginning of another. Survival now requires greater flexibility, faster movement, and closer cooperation. Groups that adapt continue, those that do not become stories told as warnings. Animals remain central to belief, often seen as messengers or guides rather than resources. Tracking animals becomes almost spiritual, mixing skill with faith and interpretation. Even after giants are gone, their memory shapes how people understand loss and change. The world feels smaller and harsher, but humans continue moving forward. Life becomes harder, but also more focused on cooperation and knowledge. This transition prepares humans for the future, even though they cannot imagine it. The age of giants ends quietly, not with a single moment, but through absence. What remains is humanity itself, shaped by loss, movement, and adaptation. This is how one world fades and another begins without anyone naming the change. Fire was not something people created easily or casually. Since there were no matches or lighters, keeping fire alive mattered more than making it. Many groups carried burning embers during travel, wrapped in bark or moss, because losing fire could mean freezing or eating raw food. When fire was lost, people used stone, dry wood, and friction to bring it back, a slow process that required patience and experience. Fire was kept small on purpose. A large flame could attract animals at night or reveal the group's position to others nearby. People did not build fireplaces or stone circles like we imagine today. They used what was available, usually loose stones or packed earth. Cooking was simple. There were no pots, pans, or metal tools, so meat was placed directly on fire or held above it with sharpened sticks. These sticks were made from hard wood, cut and shaped carefully, because breaking one meant wasting time and energy. Food was rarely cooked for comfort. Cooking made food safer and easier to eat, which mattered more than taste. Tools were simple but essential. Stone blades, wooden handles, and bone pieces were repaired often because replacing them was difficult. People carried very few possessions. Everything they owned had to be useful and light enough to move with the group. Clothing was made from animal skins tied with fiber or sinew because sewing tools were basic and materials limited. Shelter was temporary. Instead of building permanent homes, people used hides, branches, and natural cover to block wind and rain. Nothing was wasted. Bones became tools, hides became clothing, and leftover food was saved or shared carefully. Every object had a purpose, and losing something small could cause serious problems later. Daily life required constant attention. Forgetting to protect fire, tools, or food could turn a normal day into danger. People learned these habits early, watching others and copying movements without long explanations. Mistakes were remembered through stories. Someone who once lost fire during travel became a warning told to younger members. These stories were not meant to scare, but to teach responsibility without rules or punishment. Living without modern tools forced people to think ahead constantly, planning not days but moments. Fire, tools, and movement worked together. Without one, the others became harder to manage. This way of living shaped how people thought, making caution, memory, and awareness more important than comfort. Survival depended on small actions done correctly, again and again, without shortcuts. This was normal life, not extreme or heroic, just careful, repeated effort in a world that offered no second chances. Cold shaped daily life more than almost anything else. People did not dress for comfort, only for survival, and even small mistakes could cost fingers or lives. There were no jackets, boots, or gloves as we know them today. Clothing was made from animal skins, chosen for thickness, warmth, and durability. Skins were cleaned, scraped, and dried by hand, a long process that took skill and patience because poorly prepared hides offered little protection. Clothing was tied together using sinew, plant fibers, or thin strips of hide, since needles were basic and materials limited. Layers mattered. People wore several skins at once, adjusting them depending on wind, snow, or movement during travel. Feet were especially vulnerable. Simple footwear was made from soft hides, often filled with dry grass or fur for extra warmth. When footwear failed, frostbite followed quickly, so people watched each other's feet and hands during long, cold journeys. Shelter was temporary and practical. Instead of solid houses, people used hides stretched over wooden frames or natural rock cover. These shelters were built quickly and abandoned just as easily, because staying too long in one place reduced chances of survival. Fire was the center of warmth. People slept close to it, rotated positions, and fed it carefully through the night. Too much fire wasted fuel, but too little allowed cold to creep in, so balance mattered every night. During extreme cold, movement became dangerous. Stopping too long could be fatal, but moving too fast wasted energy. People learned to travel during the warmest parts of the day and rest when temperatures dropped sharply. Animals were watched closely, because their movement often signaled coming weather changes better than the sky. Cold affected food as well. Frozen meat could be stored longer, but gathering plants became harder or impossible. Hunger during winter was expected. People ate less and moved carefully, conserving energy whenever possible. Children learned early that cold was not an enemy to fight, but a condition to respect and work around. Stories warned about people who ignored the cold, rushed travel, or failed to protect their bodies properly. These stories were remembered because winter mistakes were often final and left no second chances. Living in constant cold-shaped behavior, making planning and patience more important than speed or strength. Warmth was shared. People slept close together, not for comfort, but because body heat mattered. Cold life rewarded awareness. Those who noticed small changes survived longer than those who relied on strength alone. This was Ice Age living, where warmth was earned daily and never taken for granted. People traveled without maps, roads, or signs, relying entirely on memory, landmarks, and stories passed down from older generations. Rivers, mountains, and unusual trees became reference points, remembered not by names but by events that happened near them. A place was known because someone was injured there, an animal was killed there, or food once ran out there. Distance was not measured in miles. It was measured in time, effort, and risk, such as how long water would last or when night arrived. Groups followed paths they remembered, not the shortest ones, but the safest, even if they took longer to walk. Getting lost was dangerous. A wrong turn could mean missing water, animals, or shelter, especially during cold seasons. Because of this, only certain people led movement, usually those who had walked the land many times before. Children learned routes by repetition, walking the same paths year after year until the land felt familiar. There were no borders between territories, but people knew when they entered land used by other groups. Crossing into unfamiliar areas required caution because meetings could lead to trade, conflict, or sudden danger. Some places were avoided completely, remembered through stories of illness, attacks, or groups that never returned. Travel decisions were often made early in the day because moving late increased risk and reduced visibility. Weather could change plans instantly. A sudden storm or temperature drop forced groups to stop or change direction. People carried only what they could move with, so travel shaped what objects were kept and what was left behind. Movement was slow and deliberate. Running was rare during travel because injury far from help could be fatal. Rest stops were chosen carefully, balancing shelter, visibility, and access to water. Even during rest, someone always watched the surroundings because danger did not wait for people to relax. Over time, travel became routine. Fear faded, replaced by attention and habit. People did not think of themselves as explorers. They were simply following survival patterns learned over generations. The land was not owned, only used, and always temporary. This constant movement shaped how people understood life, making change normal and permanence rare. Travel was not a journey to somewhere new, but a return to what had worked before. Food controlled almost every decision people made. When food was nearby, life felt stable, and when it disappeared, everything changed quickly. People did not eat regularly. Some days they ate well, and other days they ate very little, learning early that hunger was normal. Seasons decided what could be eaten. Warm months brought plants, roots, and berries, while cold months relied more on meat and stored food. Nothing was wasted. Meat was dried, smoked, or frozen by the cold, because throwing food away meant risking future survival. Hunting success did not mean comfort. A large kill brought short relief, but it also attracted animals and forced careful protection. During hard seasons, people ate smaller portions and moved less, saving energy rather than trying to find more food. Children learned quickly that asking for more food was useless when there was none. Sharing followed need, not desire. Starvation was not sudden. It came slowly, making people weaker and forcing difficult choices about movement and risk. Some stories spoke of groups that ignored early hunger signs and waited too long, only to disappear completely. These stories taught people to move early before desperation removed their ability to act. Plants were remembered carefully. Eating the wrong root or berry could cause sickness or death, especially during hunger. Because of this, food knowledge was guarded and passed carefully, often through warnings rather than explanations. Hunger shaped behavior. People became quieter, more focused, and less willing to waste energy on conflict. When food returned, life felt lighter, but caution remained because abundance never lasted long. Seasonal survival trained people to think ahead constantly, even when conditions seemed good. Food was not pleasure, it was fuel, shared and respected because it kept the group moving forward. This rhythm of hunger and relief repeated every year, shaping patience and resilience. Survival depended not on finding food once, but on knowing when it would run out again. People who survived many seasons learned to read small signs of coming scarcity before others noticed. These lessons became part of memory, guiding decisions long after hunger passed. Food, or the lack of it, quietly shaped the entire human life cycle. Illness was part of normal life. People did not ask why someone got sick because sickness appeared often and without warning. There were no doctors as we know them today. Healing depended on experience, plants, observation, and belief passed through generations. Small injuries were common. Cuts, burns, and broken bones happened during travel, hunting, and daily work. A deep cut could become deadly. Infection was invisible, so wounds were cleaned with water, ash, or chewed plants. People used certain plants to reduce pain, stop bleeding, or calm fever, even if they did not know why they worked. This knowledge came from trial and error. Those who survived shared what helped, and what failed was slowly forgotten. Bone fractures were serious. A broken leg could end a person's ability to move, putting the entire group at risk. Simple splints made from wood and hide were used to hold limbs in place, but healing depended mostly on time and luck. If someone could not walk, the group faced hard decisions about slowing down or changing direction. Some people recovered, others did not. Survival was never fair or predictable. Fever was feared. Long fevers weakened the body, and people believed they were signs of spirits or imbalance. Sweating, cold water, and rest near fire were common responses, though results varied greatly. Pain was endured quietly. Complaining did not heal wounds and wasted energy needed for survival. People believed illness sometimes followed broken rules, ignored signs, or disrespect toward animals or the land. Because of this, healing often included words, gestures, or small rituals meant to restore balance. Older members remembered which sicknesses passed and which usually ended in death. This knowledge shaped decisions, including whether someone should continue traveling or remain behind temporarily. Children learned early that injury changed everything, making careful movement more important than speed. Scars became common, marking survival rather than weakness. Some people lived with lasting pain or limited movement, adapting their role within the group. Healing was not about returning to normal, but about adjusting to what the body could still do. Those who survived illness often gained respect, seen as protected or resilient. Death from sickness was accepted because there was rarely anything else to do. The group did not blame individuals for illness, understanding that everyone was vulnerable. Survival depended on adapting quickly when health failed. Illness reminded people that strength could disappear without warning. Because of this, no one believed they were untouchable. Health was temporary, like food or shelter, and treated with the same caution. Those who lived long carried visible signs of injury and sickness, proof of endurance rather than comfort. Healing knowledge became part of group memory, guiding future actions. This balance between injury, healing, and adaptation shaped how people treated risk. Life continued despite sickness because stopping meant greater danger. Illness was not an interruption to life, it was part of it. A normal human life at that time was not about comfort, success, or personal goals, but about staying alive long enough to matter to others. People did not wake up thinking about the future in years. The future was measured in days, weather changes, and food that might run out. Life felt repetitive, but repetition was safety. Doing the same things in the same way reduced mistakes and kept danger predictable. Most people lived their entire lives without ever knowing the size of the world or how many humans existed beyond their group. The group was the whole universe. Everything important happened within it, and anything outside was unknown and often dangerous. People did not compare their lives to others far away. Comparison required information, and information was limited to memory and stories. Hardship was not seen as unfair. Cold, hunger, and loss were expected parts of life, not failures of the world. Because of this, people focused on endurance rather than happiness, learning to accept conditions instead of fighting them. Joy existed, but it was simple. Eating after hunger, warmth after cold, and safety after danger felt deeply satisfying. People laughed, but not often or loudly. Loud joy attracted attention, and attention was rarely good. There was no idea of wasting time. Time passed whether used or not, so people filled it with necessary action. Skills defined identity more than personality. A good hunter, a careful gatherer, or a reliable watcher mattered more than opinions. Respect was earned quietly through consistency, not through words or displays of power. People did not expect life to improve. Improvement was rare and temporary, so survival itself felt like success. Children grew up watching this reality and accepted it without questioning, because they had no alternative to compare it to. There was little space for regret. What was done could not be undone, and energy spent on regret threatened survival. People remembered the past only when it helped the present. Memories that caused fear or hesitation were slowly forgotten. Death was common enough that it did not dominate thought. Life continued because thinking about death changed nothing. A long life was admired, not because it was easy, but because it proved adaptation and awareness. People who lived long were not heroes. They were careful, observant, and often lucky. Luck was acknowledged openly. Survival was not seen as fully earned or deserved. This understanding created humility. No one believed they controlled the world. Nature was not romantic or cruel. It simply existed, and people learned to exist within it. There were no dreams of changing life forever. Survival required accepting limits rather than breaking them. A normal life was not remembered by name or record, but by habits passed on quietly. Most lives ended without leaving a mark beyond memory, and that was considered normal. Meaning came from continuity, knowing the group would survive a little longer because of shared effort. People did not ask what life was for. Living was the answer. This way of thinking shaped humans for thousands of years, long before cities or writing appeared. It created patience, caution, and cooperation as core human traits. Even today, traces of this thinking remain in how people respond to danger and uncertainty. This was not a simple life, but it was a complete one. It asked little and demanded much, shaping humans into survivors first. A normal human life was not extraordinary, but it was enough. When people lived 40,000 years ago, most days did not feel important while they were happening. Life was made of ordinary moments that slowly blended together. People woke up because the cold reached them, because light changed, or because others around them were already moving. There was no clear start to the day, only a gradual return to activity. Someone always checked the fire first. If it survived the night, the day felt easier. If it did not, everything slowed down while people worked to bring it back. Food was always in the back of everyone's mind. Even when no one talked about it, people felt whether there was enough or whether movement would soon be necessary. Some days felt calm. The weather stayed stable, the land was familiar, and food was found without much effort. On those days, people rested more and spoke less. Other days were heavy. Hunger lingered, cold pressed harder, or travel felt endless. During those days, people talked more, because voices helped keep the group together. Walking filled much of life. It was not seen as travel or effort, but simply as how life moved forward. Stopping too long was never comfortable. People did not think in long plans. Tomorrow mattered more than next year, and next season mattered more than distant ideas of the future. Children grew up surrounded by this rhythm. They learned what mattered not from lessons, but from watching how adults reacted to change. Stories drifted through daily life without ceremony. Someone remembered a past mistake, an old hunt, or a place that should be avoided. These stories were not always told in full. Often they appeared in fragments, repeated pieces that slowly shaped understanding. People believed the land listened. They spoke quietly in certain places, avoided others, and respected signs they could not explain. Animals were watched constantly. Their movement often said more than the sky or the wind about what was coming next. Night changed everything. Sounds traveled farther, and darkness made people stay closer, listening more than speaking. Sleep came in pieces. Someone always stayed awake, not out of fear, but because attention kept everyone alive. Illness and injury were accepted without surprise. When someone slowed down, the group adjusted without long discussion. Older people moved less and spoke more. Younger people moved more and listened when it mattered. No one expected life to be fair. Survival felt temporary, borrowed from a world that could take it back at any time. Joy appeared quietly. Warmth after cold, food after hunger, safety after danger felt stronger than celebration ever could. There were no milestones. Life did not announce adulthood, aging, or importance. These things happened slowly, almost unnoticed. People did not measure success. A good life meant staying alive and helping others stay alive a little longer. Death arrived without drama. When it did, the group paused briefly, then continued, because stopping invited more loss. Memory kept people connected. The dead remained present through habits, warnings, and small choices made every day. The land changed over time. Ice retreated, animals disappeared, and routes shifted, but people adapted without naming the change. Life did not feel historic while it was happening. It felt normal, repetitive, and necessary. No one believed they were special. They were simply part of a pattern that existed long before them. And when one life ended, others continued, walking the same paths, telling the same stories, and solving the same problems again. That was a normal human life 40,000 years ago. People living in that time did not know they were part of something ancient. They did not think of themselves as early humans or ancestors to anyone. They believed life had always been this way, shaped by movement, hunger, weather, and the need to stay close to others. No one imagined a different future. There were no ideas about progress, cities, or changing the world, only adapting to what already existed. When something worked, it was repeated. When it failed, it was remembered quietly and avoided next time. People trusted habits more than ideas. Habits kept them alive when thinking too much could cause hesitation. Knowledge stayed practical. If a story did not help with food, safety, or movement, it slowly disappeared. People did not collect information for curiosity. Everything learned had a purpose, connected to survival. Time felt circular. Seasons returned, animals moved away and came back, children grew into adults, and elders slowly faded. Life did not feel like a journey toward something new, but like walking the same paths again with small changes. People understood change only when it directly affected survival, such as colder winters or fewer animals. There was no sense of loss for a world that no longer existed, because no one knew what the world used to be. Each generation accepted the world it inherited and learned how to live inside it as best as possible. The idea of leaving something behind for distant future people did not exist. Memory mattered, but only as long as it helped the living. This way of thinking kept people focused, calm, and prepared for uncertainty. Life felt fragile but familiar, like something that could break but never truly surprise. When a person reached the end of life, it rarely happened in a dramatic way. Most lives faded slowly through weakness, illness, or exhaustion. People noticed the change quietly. Someone walked less, spoke less, or stayed closer to the center of the group. There were no final speeches or promises. Everything that mattered had already been shown through actions. The group adjusted naturally, without long discussion, because change was part of life they knew well. After death, attention shifted quickly back to survival, because the living could not afford to stop. The dead were remembered through habits, a path chosen carefully, a fire kept smaller, a warning repeated to children. No one expected to be remembered forever. Being remembered for a short time was enough. As years passed, names faded, but lessons remained. Children grew into adults, hearing fragments of old stories without knowing where they began. In this way, a single life became part of something larger without ever being recorded. Human life continued not through monuments, but through repetition. Groups moved on, weather changed, animals disappeared, and new children were born into the same challenges. The world did not mark endings. It kept moving as it always had. A normal human life ended without recognition, but not without meaning. Meaning came from participation, not legacy. Life did not need to be heroic to matter. It only needed to be lived long enough to pass something forward. Life in that time was made of small actions repeated every day, and most of them never felt important while they were happening. People spent a lot of time simply fixing things. Tools broke, hides tore, and fire had to be maintained constantly to avoid losing it. Much of the day passed in quiet movement. Walking, stopping, watching, and continuing again filled hours without anyone counting time. Hands were always busy. Someone scraped a hide, someone shaped wood, someone adjusted a tool that had become loose. There was no clear separation between work and rest. People rested while doing simple tasks and worked while walking or talking. Silence was common and comfortable. People did not speak unless there was something useful to say. Children grew up surrounded by this rhythm, learning patience because rushing rarely helped. Weather often decided what the day would become. A sudden change could turn a calm day into a difficult one. People learned to notice small signs. A shift in wind, animal behavior, or clouds could change decisions quickly. Waiting was part of life. Waiting for animals, waiting for better weather, waiting for wounds to heal. Nothing felt wasted. Even slow days mattered because they kept the group alive without drawing attention. Life moved forward through these small moments, not through big events. What is hard to understand today is that this way of life did not feel extreme to the people living it. They did not feel unlucky or deprived. They felt normal because this was the only life they had ever known. Comfort was defined differently. Warmth, safety, and enough food felt like success. People did not dream of easier lives because dreaming did not change reality. They trusted what had worked before. Old habits felt safer than new ideas. The world felt dangerous but familiar. Fear existed, but it was controlled through routine and attention. Children accepted this world without resistance, growing into it naturally. Older people remembered harder times and knew that conditions could always worsen again. Because of this, people appreciated calm periods without celebrating them. Life moved slowly, shaped by repetition and memory. No one believed the world owed them anything. Living was not a challenge to overcome, but a condition to manage. When one life ended, others continued without questioning why. And this continuity is what allowed humans to survive for thousands of years. One thing that filled life 40,000 years ago was waiting. People waited far more than they acted, even if it did not feel that way. They waited for animals to appear, for weather to change, for wounds to heal, and for hunger to ease just enough to keep moving. Waiting was not frustrating. It was understood as part of how the world worked, and fighting it only wasted energy. People learned to sit quietly for long periods, watching land, listening to sounds, and noticing small changes others might miss. During these moments, little was said. Silence was useful because it allowed attention to stay sharp. Children learned this early. They were not entertained or distracted, so patience became normal rather than difficult. Time was not measured. A long wait was simply a long wait, not minutes or hours. Sometimes waiting ended with success. Animals appeared, weather improved, or strength returned. Other times, nothing happened, and people moved on without disappointment because waiting itself had not been a mistake. Doing nothing was not laziness. It was part of survival, just as important as movement or work. This rhythm of acting and waiting shaped how people thought, making them calmer and less reactive. Life slowed people down, teaching them to accept moments where nothing could be changed. The world people lived in did not offer explanations. Things happened and people learned to live with the results. Storms came without warning. Animals disappeared. Illness arrived suddenly. There was rarely a clear reason why. People created stories not to explain everything, but to make uncertainty easier to accept. These stories did not promise control. They reminded people that not everything could be understood or fixed. Living without answers became normal. People focused on what could be done rather than what could be known. This shaped a quiet mindset. Fear existed, but panic was rare because panic never helped. Children grew up accepting uncertainty as natural, not something to solve. People trusted experience more than hope. What had worked before felt safer than what might work later. The land was respected because it could not be controlled. Animals were respected because they could not be predicted. Life was lived close to reality, without layers of meaning added later. There was no idea of destiny or purpose beyond survival and continuity. And yet, people lived full lives within these limits, connected to others and to the world around them. They did not need the world to make sense in order to live inside it. Nights were long and heavy, especially during cold seasons, and people treated darkness with caution rather than fear. When the sun disappeared, the world felt closer and smaller, and everyone stayed nearer to each other. Fire became the center of everything at night. It was not only warmth, but also protection and a point of focus that kept attention steady when sounds carried far into the dark. People did not talk much at night. Words were used carefully because silence helped reveal movement beyond the light and kept the group alert without panic. Someone always stayed awake, not because of rules, but because experience taught that danger appeared most often when everyone rested at once. Children learned early that night was different. They stayed close, watched quietly, and listened to the same sounds repeated again and again. Darkness made memory stronger. Stories told at night were remembered better because there was nothing else to distract the mind. People spoke about past journeys, mistakes, and moments of luck, not to entertain, but to remind everyone what mattered. Sometimes stories were unfinished. A sentence ended, silence followed, and no one asked for more because the lesson was already understood. The night slowed everything down. Movements were careful, gestures smaller, and decisions postponed until light returned. Even fear felt different at night. It was quieter, controlled, and shared, making it easier to carry. Sleep came in short pieces. People rested lightly, waking often, adjusting to sounds without fully rising. This way of resting shaped the body and mind, making alertness natural even during exhaustion. Nights were not times of reflection or dreams about the future. They were moments of presence, of simply being aware together. When morning finally came, it felt earned, not promised, and people moved again without celebrating survival. These repeated nights shaped patience, awareness, and trust within the group. Life was not divided into important and unimportant moments. Night was as much a part of survival as day. In the end, what remains from a normal human life 40,000 years ago is not a story of events, but a way of living inside the world. People did not leave records, buildings, or names carved into stone. What they left was behavior, habits, and memory carried forward by others. A person mattered while they were alive because of what they did for the group, not because of how they were remembered later. When someone was gone, the group changed slightly, adjusting roles and routines without stopping to question the loss. Life continued through repetition. The same paths were walked, the same signs watched, and the same mistakes avoided when possible. Children grew into adults already shaped by everything they had seen, heard, and experienced without explanation. The world did not pause to mark endings. Seasons continued, animals moved, and weather shifted without recognition of individual lives. And yet, nothing was truly wasted. Every action, warning, and habit passed forward, added to the group's ability to survive. Human life was not defined by greatness, achievement, or progress. It was defined by endurance and adaptation. People lived without knowing they were part of a long human story, yet they carried it forward every day. A normal life did not need to be heroic or easy to matter. It only needed to continue long enough to support others. This way of living shaped humanity long before cities, writing, or history existed. Even today, traces of that life remain in instincts, habits, and quiet reactions to danger or uncertainty. The world has changed, but the foundation was built in those long, ordinary lives. Life moved on then, just as it does now, without explanation or ceremony. And that is how a normal human life 40,000 years ago ended. Not with meaning given to it later, but with meaning lived in the moment.